Most important get from the transfer portal, biggest boom potential, and a lockdown starter. It's Tennessee transfer portal superlatives on a Thursday at Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it. Thursday morning, Locked On Vols. I am Cain. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Vols a part of your morning routine, your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network available. Big show coming up here today. Superlatives coming up in segment number 1 here in just a matter of a couple of seconds. Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs going to chat Ryan Staub and Isaiah Hardge from Colorado, so via the transfer portal. And then we got Throwback Thursday with Neal and Prescourt coming up in segment number 3, visiting the 1970 comeback win over UCLA to preserve, at the time, 10-1 season before winning the Sugar Bowl that year to go 11-1 for the Volunteers. A lot going on here today. Everydayer Club, again, $5 a month, ad-free version of the audio show for Locked On Vols. Invite to a merch store where you can buy Locked On merchandise, some apparel. You've got the Discord group chat where we chat in there about what's going on with the show, and when we'll watch basketball games, we'll be chatting in there. All that and more, just $5 a month. Come join the Everydayer Club for Locked On Vols at lockedonvols.supercast.com. That is lockedonvols.supercast.com. All right, superlatives for Tennessee football's transfer portal haul. I broke it down in here to most important commit, most underrated commit, lockdown starter, guy nobody talks about, and biggest boom potential. And again, a lot of these guys could be in different categories, no doubt. Like there could be a couple for lockdown starter, in my opinion. There could be a couple for biggest, guy nobody's talking about, most important commit. A couple of these are pretty straightforward, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, but some aren't. But what I thought was interesting, and I did this exercise, posted it, or going to post it at volquest.com. I have 5 sections here. And all 3 are defensive players. And again, there's a need on the defensive side of the football for Tennessee, okay? That was the primary need. We can have the quarterback conversation at a later date. I mean, that's going to go on all offseason long. But Tennessee had to upgrade its defense, had to. And that's where the bulk of this work came in the class. And so I just thought it's pretty reflective in my Tennessee football transfer portal superlatives exercise we're doing right now. So let's start off with most important commit. For me, it's Amare Campbell, linebacker. A lot of you guys, everydayers, probably could have guessed that because I just think he's key to, first of all, he's a linebacker. It's a leadership position. Secondly, he has been so freaking productive and durable throughout his time in college at UNC and at Penn State. Number 3, he knows the Jim Knowles system, okay? And again, he's a communicator. He's the linebacker. Can help with the defensive line, help with the secondary. I just think for year 1, new system, new coaches, new scheme. But, oh, yeah, he ran it last year, and he knows all these coaches. I just think, for me, that's a cheat code, if you will, moving forward to a new phase of Tennessee defense. So I think Amare Campbell, the linebacker for Penn State, the transfer to Tennessee, is the most important commit that Tennessee's gotten. Most underrated commit, I'm going to stay with the Penn State transfers. I'm going to go back a level in the secondary to the defensive backfield, safety specifically, and I'm going to say Dejuan Lane. Dejuan Lane has not been an everyday starter. He did start 3 games in 2025, but he's played a ton of games for Anthony Poindexter, who's the secondary coach and co-defensive coordinator, for Jim Knowles, who's now the defensive coordinator at Tennessee, was the defensive coordinator at Penn State in 2025 this past year. So he knows the system. He knows the terminology, again, a lot like Campbell. But this is a position of need. Tennessee has got to get better at safety. And this is a guy that can come in and just roll right in and play. I mean, I think he's going to be a starter for Tennessee. Well, potentially a starter for Tennessee. I think TJ Metcalf's going to be a starter. Idris Farouk's going to have a conversation about that as well. But a guy that's played in 29 career games, 445 career snaps. I think that this is a guy that's going to play a lot regardless. And again, much like Campbell, is a guy that I think can kind of accelerate the growing pains on defense, right out of the gate. So I think most underrated commit is safety Dejuan Lane from Penn State. Lockdown starter. I thought this one was interesting because there are a couple that I think will be starters, but this one that I'm about to say, 1,000% if healthy, he's going to start, in my opinion. And that's opposite of Ty Redmond at cornerback, and that is Kayin Lee, who transferred in from Auburn. Again, he's got Southeastern Conference experience, starting experience over the course of 3 years at Auburn. He started 4 games at Auburn in 2023, 10 games in 2024, 11 games in 2025, 36 career games, 25 career starts. Again, a guy that knows what this league is, the versatility, the physicality, the grind of a Southeastern Conference schedule. Kayin Lee, though, will he be as good as Colton Hood? I don't know, probably not, but talk about experience, more of a sure thing than Colton Hood was this time last year coming into Tennessee, in my opinion. So I'm not saying he'll be as good as Colton Hood, but more of a sure thing because he's been in the league for sure. So where Tennessee, I don't think they, and hopefully they can add another corner. I think they should have done more at corner. But you got Ty Redmond on one side, Kayin Lee on the other, and there's not much behind it. So I think a lockdown starter when healthy is Auburn cornerback transfer Kayin Lee. Guy that nobody talks about. And I think this one, again, we're going to the secondary. I think this one is part due to the fact that he was Tennessee's first commit. So there's been 17 commits, technically 18 commits because Gavin Freeman flipped to, the special teamers flipped from his Tennessee commit from Oklahoma State to Baylor last week. But there's been so much that's happened since that one Sunday about 3 weeks ago. And that's Quay Moss from Kansas State. He's going to play nickel and started at junior college, then played at, then played at West Georgia, and then played at Kansas State in 2025. 41 tackles last year, 5 TFLs, a sack, 2 interceptions. Very productive. Again, a guy that Tennessee sought after, wanted to be a part of things early on. They thought that he would fit this system, this scheme. At the nickel, Tennessee has no experience in the system, obviously, but had no star players, essentially. Boo Carter was dismissed from the team. Jalen McMurray exhausted his eligibility. They needed somebody. They targeted him, got this one done early. And so I think because it was done so early and just because there's so many other higher profile recruits, if you will, in this portal cycle, nobody talks about Quay Moss, but he's going to play. He's going to start, in my opinion, if healthy, and he is going to be a big part of what Tennessee has in the secondary moving forward. The last section I have, the last superlative that I did was biggest boom potential, and this one might be the easiest to guess. I'll give you just a second to think about it if you don't have it already. You're probably shouting at the in your cars, listening to headphones, Bluetooth or whatever, running, working, doing whatever it is, and you're like, I'm thinking it's this guy. Well, you're probably right. I mean, this is the easiest one of the bunch, in my opinion. Biggest boom potential, Chaz Coleman. There's a reason why Jim Knowles referred to him as the Chazmanian Devil last year, coaching him at Penn State. There's a reason, despite not a whole lot of production, not a whole lot of PT, okay, last year as a true freshman, there's a reason Chaz Coleman was ranked number 3 overall in the On3 transfer portal rankings this cycle. I mean, there's a reason why LSU wanted him. There's a reason why Ohio State wanted him. Chaz Coleman has big-time boom potential. He only played in 150 snaps last year for Penn State as a true freshman. He is long. He is 6'4", 250. He is athletic. I think he is going to be an absolute stud. So, biggest boom potential based on limited experience so far, I think it's easy, hands down. I think it is Chaz Coleman. What say you? Please let me know. Am I missing somebody that should be discussed? Who would you have in terms of biggest boom potential? Guy nobody talks about, lockdown starter, most underrated commit, and most important commit. Would love to hear from you guys. Again, I said Amare Campbell for most important, Dejuan Lane for most underrated, Kayin Lee for lockdown starter, Quay Moss, guy nobody talks about, and biggest boom potential, Chaz Coleman. Would love to hear from you guys if I'm missing anybody or how you guys would go about rating these at _Cain or at Locked On Vols, and talk about it in the Discord channel, the Locked On Vols channel. Please go ahead and take care of that. All right, when we come back, we will chat with Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs. He's going to chat Ryan Staub and Isaiah Hardge. All that and more, Hardge. All that and more coming up next right here on your Thursday. Locked On Ball. Stay tuned. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or with the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forums and work to get you every deduction possible. You can upload your documents, go about your day, get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling all your business. For a limited time, you can get your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. File by February 28th to take advantage of this deal. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local. That is TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Want to welcome on back to the show, friend of the show, because there's so much movement between Tennessee and Colorado. Locked On Buffs host Kevin Borba. We got it again, man. I went on your show and talked a little bit about Boo Carter going to Colorado, and now you're here on Locked On Vols talking about Ryan Staub and Isaiah Hardge. Let's start with the quarterback. And Ryan Staub, a guy that's gotten a little bit of experience, but primarily a career backup. From your vantage point, what has he brought to the table, and kind of what should Tennessee fans expect in the transfer portal quarterback that's going to come in here and compete with two young guys?
Yeah, I think him going there shows to me that he's not scared of competition. We knew this right away. It was evident in Colorado that once Deion Sanders took the job, his son was probably going to be the starting quarterback, and Ryan Staub had, and I said this on my show, he had 3 to 4 chances to leave, and he never wavered. Like, he is a guy that is willing to grind. And when given the opportunity, he can make some plays. And I think that was sort of the thing that excited Colorado fans for the flash in the pan that he had was like, he pushes the ball downfield. Like, that was the most vertical Colorado's offense was all year, was when Ryan Staub was in. I think he had a tendency to be a little reckless at times, but I'm telling you, Eric, like, you put this guy in the 2-minute, like, if there was such a thing in football where you just put in a quarterback for the 2-minute drill, like, Ryan Staub would be the guy. Like, in 2 minutes, he was a prime, like, Joe Montana. He was a prime Peyton Manning. I don't know what it was, but, like, once that 2-minute mark hit, he was electric.
So he started one game this past year against Houston. You're referencing 19 of 35, 204 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. He started a game against Utah in 2023. You mentioned that he had a couple different chances to leave. Why is he leaving now?
Yeah, I think in reality, which it was interesting. I thought he was leaving to go be a starter at a G5. Like, I thought, like, every G5 program in the country would have lined out the door for this guy to be their starter, because he would probably be Jake Retzlaff at Tulane. He'd probably be Alonzo Barnett at James Madison. Like, I thought that was what was next for him. And clearly he feels he is able to contend at this level. Like, that's what this move tells me. And so I was a little shocked by it. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I'm not going to be like, yeah, Ryan is just the guy I always thought would be the SEC starter. And I think he sees an opportunity at Tennessee. And, like, you know this as well as me, like, Tennessee didn't bring in a transfer, right? You have a couple blue chip quarterbacks that are now having the opportunity to start, but there is no clear starter. And so if Ryan Staub could string together a good fall camp and good spring camp, like, he could be an SEC starter next year. And that's where this comes in. And so it's interesting to me because it's not the move I would have predicted for him, but I do think he has the ability to be an exciting player. He just has to be sort of schemed into success at times. And for Colorado, they weren't able to do that. We saw it against Houston, right? Houston sort of, once they took away all the stuff he wanted to do, they got pressure on him. He panicked a little bit. He forced throws. But against Delaware, obviously not the best sample size or the best opponent, he came in and he was letting it fly, right? He was launching it downfield. And I know Tennessee is very vertical. And so there is a lot of things that translate. It just wasn't the move I expected. And I am not trying to make this come off as a shot at Ryan. It's just, it seemed like the best move for him was like, go be a starter at the group of 5 level. And if you think you're a P4 guy, come back up the next year. That's what I thought. But he got the opportunities. Ohio State was in on him. Kentucky came after him. Like, he got a lot of looks.
Yeah, and I mean, the majority of Tennessee fans are, like, frustrated with this. It's like, well, didn't get Sam Levitt, didn't get Josh Hoover, didn't get Ryan Sorsby. Oh my gosh, we got this backup from Colorado. And then other ones are like, he's just a depth piece, guys. He's just a depth piece because you have Faison Brandon, who's a top 10 5-star signee that's here now, and George McIntyre, who once upon a time was a highly rated prospect that's going to be a redshirt freshman. So it's just the unknown factor. Like, I mean, those guys, there's no experience, and this guy's got a little bit, and Josh Heupel's going into a very pivotal year in his coaching career, having already made a lot of changes, strength coach, DC, staff turnover. but you just don't know what you're going to get out of quarterback right now. So
Yeah.
I think that's where some Tennessee fans are frustrated, where they thought that they should have got somebody more proven. But
Yeah.
do want to ask about Ryan Staub as well. Caden Salter benched.
Mhm.
Why was he benched? Was it because Staub was out playing him? That's when he came in and started that game. And then I think the one a couple of years ago, you mentioned Sanders was hurt. That's why he started that game. But, I mean, was Staub really, like, pushing for that job? Or kind of what was the reason for him starting that game whenever they benched Salter?
Yeah, so the quarterback situation, and I talked about this countless times on my show, I think it was handled disastrously for Colorado, honestly. I think they got a little skittish about Caden Salter after week 1. They lost to Georgia Tech, and it just seemed like they were – I don't know what they were expecting from him, but it wasn't what he gave them. And so immediately week 2 against Delaware, they decided every quarterback, or all 3 quarterbacks, so it was Caden Salter, Staub, and then Julian Lewis, who's the 5-star freshman. They were all going to get a couple drives, and then from then on it'd be whoever played the best. And so Ryan Staub came in, and he came in around the 2-minute mark, like I said earlier, that's his sweet spot, and just absolutely delivered. Like, one of his first couple throws was like a 60-yard bomb to a wide receiver, one of their fastest wide receivers, and he just lit it up. And it was Delaware, so again, take that with a grain of salt, but he lit it up, and it was just like he did the most that game. And then Colorado sort of found themselves with a controversy because he outplayed Salter in that game. And so then it's like, okay, well, he just outplayed your starter that you paid a lot of money for. Yeah. Are you just going to shove him back on the bench and not play him again? And so they rode with him against Houston. And that game, Coach Prime, after the Delaware game, called him Martin Luther Staub because he said he had a dream and like it was exciting. And Colorado fans were like, yes, like we have a guy at quarterback. And like, I'll tell you, Eric, there's been a lot of buzz in Boulder over the past few years. Like, I don't think anything will match TCU week 1 of 2023. Like, that was just otherworldly. But Ryan Staub, like, having a big game was like exciting because Colorado fans, they appreciated that he stuck out behind Shedeur Sanders. Coach Prime always raved about his effort and his energy and like what he brought to the table. And he finally got a chance to showcase it and took advantage. So goes into Houston, starts. He just didn't have the game that he needed, right? Like you said, he threw a couple picks and he was very shifty. He had a bright moment where he scrambled off to the left and had a nice little shovel pass to Amare Miller that went for 30-plus yards, and he's very creative. Like, I will give him that. He has a lot of sauce, and you can't really measure sauce. Like, there's no metric for it, but he has it. And so just didn't perform well enough to hold on to the job, and then Colorado yanked the plug on that again and went back to Salter.
Well, I think the priority is going to be these 2 young guys in the room, but you said it earlier. I mean, you're bringing in a veteran that's started games before, and he's going to be in his 4th year in college. So that's not nothing when you compare to a guy that's about to enter his 2nd year and a guy that just got on campus. Ryan Staub is going to have a chance to go and win that job. Again, I would be surprised, but he's going to go out there and have a chance, and that's all you can ask for. And I mean, I'm sure he got paid a little bit, but Tennessee certainly did not break the bank to bring him here. But in his eyes, it's like, man, there's opportunity here. Let's go get it. So,
and one more thing, like, I think the other UT in the SEC, Texas, obviously, they had Arch Manning, but there was a lot of times they went to Matthew Caldwell. Not a lot, but like there was a few times where Arch's helmet fell off or Arch was banged up or whatever, and Matthew Caldwell was always consistent. You put him in, he made plays. I think Ryan Staub, at worst, is just a backup that you could trust. And I know Tennessee fans were hoping for the $5 million quarterback, but you'd much rather have a backup you could trust than you put in a redshirt freshman whose hands are shaking and like he's scared. So Ryan Staub is going to give you some steadiness and veteran in the room that you need.
Kevin, you've been on the show long enough. You know, this is the only UT in the SEC. We don't recognize that.
TU, the other one. TU was the other one, right?
Quickly, I didn't anticipate spending 8 minutes on Ryan Staub, but I'll take it. Isaiah Hardge. I mean, everybody knows Travis Hunter. Okay, he's 101. Okay, Boo Carter going to Colorado has potential to be a 2-way guy, but Isaiah Hardge is kind of using a 2-way role a little bit. Wide receiver, defensive back, corner, returns kicks. I think he's coming here and he's going to be all over the return game, okay, from day one, and I think he's going to practice at the nickel spot and or corner. I don't think he's going to focus on offense at all. What position do you think is best suits him, and kind of what does he bring to the table in terms of what Tennessee fans should know about him?
Yeah, I think he should focus on see, I like him with the ball in his hands, but most people want him at nickel. But I think nickel is probably where he's going to end up, corner. I just feel like that's where his skills most translate. Like he has the ball skills, and he played a little bit of running back in the spring game one time, and it was electric. And then we never saw him there again. Played some wide receiver, and he made some plays. And I think we talked about this on my show about Boo Carter is sort of to a very different degree, but Isaiah Hardge was just a jack of all trades that didn't master anything. And so I think his problem was, I don't know what position he is. Like, I genuinely don't. Like, Colorado was like, he's the next Travis. And then they didn't use him like Travis at all. So I'd put him at corner. He's very athletic. He's got good ball skills. And I mean, like you said, special teams is another way to have the ball in his hands. So that's where I envision Isaiah Hardge. If you need like a wide receiver step up, like say you're all of a sudden shallow and at the slot wide receiver spot, that's where he would find his role on offense.
Yeah, and Tennessee went into a couple games this year where they had like 5 scholarship wide receivers. The numbers were thin. They don't play but 3, essentially 3 or 4. But just they have a small room to begin with. So like a guy like Hardge who could step in for a series if needed. Like if somebody turned an ankle or something, I mean that can be big as kind of a safety blanket for your football team. Kevin, as always, man, thanks so much. And it feels like Tennessee players are going to Colorado. Colorado's players coming to Tennessee. Yeah. If anybody wants to know more about the Buffs, how can we listen and watch your work?
Yeah, we're over at Locked On Buffs, everywhere where you get your podcast. I'm doing some interviews, talking about all the Tennessee players that are coming over, because I think the deal was when we initially made our first trade, we got 3 future firsts. So I think we're still getting those back. We gave you Colton Hood, so you're welcome.
Woo! That was a good one. That was a good one. Hate that it was only for 1 year, but we will take it. Kevin, as always, man, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Got Noah Taylor on here from NPC, Neyland Press Corp, and joining us here to talk about the 1970 win over UCLA. Throwing it back here on a Thursday, and this was not a Sugar Bowl. This was not a bowl game. This was not an SEC championship. This was the final game in the regular season that Tennessee played UCLA. And what's interesting here is Tennessee had a Sugar Bowl bid, had 1 loss on the year. It was to Auburn earlier in the year. But it had a really, really good season. UCLA was not a good football team, and Tennessee fell behind late thanks to a Bobby Scott. What up, Bobby Scott? A pick 6 allowed UCLA to take the lead at 14-13 or 17-14 there with just about 3 minutes and 40 seconds left. But then Scott and his teammates put on some magic, and Tennessee came back and won that game, preserving the Sugar Bowl bid and finishing that 1970 season at Neyland the right way. It's a pretty interesting story you have up on your Substack at Neyland Press Corps this week.
Yeah, it was a fun one. I actually had been looking into this game a couple of months ago and thought that's one I'll put in my back pocket for one of those weeks that we always talk about where I have no idea what I'm going to do. So I thought this would be a good week for it. And this was Bill Battle's first season. Obviously, Doug Dickey had left after a very successful tenure at Tennessee after the 69 season. Defending SEC champs. Bill Battle was only 28 years old when he took the head coaching job at Tennessee. Was obviously on Doug Dickey's staff, was elevated, but an incredible first year for him. Like you mentioned, I think that Auburn loss was in week 2, and outside of that, maybe the South Carolina game was close. There weren't a lot of close games for Tennessee that year. They beat Alabama, Bear Bryant, 24-0. It was actually the last time Tennessee beat them until 1982. So I think Alabama turned the ball over 7 times in that game. That was one of the hallmarks of that Tennessee football team, where their ability to create turnovers. And they went into that UCLA game in the final game of the regular season, 2 interceptions away from breaking the NCAA record. They didn't quite get there, but they got within 1 in that game. Ray Nettles, the linebacker, dropped one at one point in the game. But UCLA team. One thing I thought was interesting with the parallels in this game, and I think we talked about it a while back, but 2025 was the 60th anniversary of the 1965 Tennessee UCLA game. Gary Beeben, who ended up winning the Heisman a couple years later for the Bruins. That game was played in Memphis. They were number 5. Tennessee was, I think, number 7. And Dewey Warren had the famous touchdown run where he kind of just fell across the goal line at the end, and Tennessee won that game 35-34, 36-34. There were parallels in this game, not so much because of the record. UCLA, like you said, was not very good. They'd just gotten beaten pretty good by Southern Cal the week before. But it kind of played out similarly. Tennessee kind of looked like they were going to run away with it a couple points during the game. And then, as you mentioned, as they're trying to put the game away deep in UCLA territory, Ron Carver stepped in front of Bobby Scott pass that kind of went a little wide and went 85 yards, pick six for a touchdown with 3:40 left. They get the lead. And but it was kind of enough time for Tennessee to work its magic. They drive it downfield really quickly. I think Bobby Scott hit Lester McLean for across midfield, and then Don McCleary had a catch as well where a ref kind of got in the way and sealed off a defender. So they kind of got a little lucky there. I think there was a late hit interception UCLA dropped on that drive. So a lot of stuff went Tennessee's way, and then of course the final. Or really the game deciding touchdown. Tennessee ended up scoring again with like a second left, pretty meaningless. But the meaningful touchdown was the 19-yard run by Kurt Watson up the middle of the field. Kind of lost his balance for a second, kept it, got back up and scored, and Tennessee was able to win that game and go on and beat Air Force pretty convincingly in the Sugar Bowl and finish 11-1.
Yeah, Bobby Scott didn't even start this game. You wrote in there that he had a foot injury suffered the week before, so the backup started the game, and then the backup gets hurt, and then Bobby Scott comes in and plays really well. Did I read this correctly? 32 completions in this football game. That's incredible, especially for 1970 when you're still not throwing the football an awful lot, right? He threw for 211 yards off 32 completions, so a lot of stuff around the line of scrimmage. But Scott comes in. It's just kind of wild too because like nowadays in football, it's can you go or can you not go? I know there were some situations where like Wendell Moy dressed last year. Arion Carter was on the sideline one game. Brew McCoy for Vanderbilt in 2024. It's like, well, they're available if you need them, but they don't play. But nowadays it's so much like, can you go? Okay, you're going to play. It's if you can't go, then you'll be in street clothes. But back then it's like you suited up, and Bobby Scott came in there and didn't start, but still completed 32 passes injured on a foot.
Yeah, that was one of the more interesting things about this game and really that Tennessee offense as a whole, because it didn't really start until Doug Dickey came in that Tennessee's offense was overhauled. I know we've talked about that before, but, that General Neyland ran the single wing, and then, obviously a lot of Bowden White ended up becoming the head coach later. He played for Neyland, so he ran the same offense, and it kind of revolutionized with Doug Dickey and especially Dewey Warren. We just talked about him, but in that 65 season when he came in, he wasn't really a runner. He threw the ball and aired it out, and you saw that with Bobby Scott in 1970. That was a Tennessee team. It's kind of funny to look back now. I think I mentioned it in the story and can't name the yards off the top of my head, but that was a single season best for Tennessee's offense in school history. And you may look at those yards now and think, that's nothing. But that 1970 offense was pretty impressive and set a bunch of records that have long been broken. But, at the time were pretty, not something you saw a lot, especially out of Tennessee teams. But, an incredible afternoon for them and needed every bit of Bobby Scott's arm to win this game.
Bobby Scott, who for the longest time, contributed on the game day all day coverage for the Sports Animal. So that's how I always know the name. Obviously, clearly I wasn't around to watch him play, but played for Tennessee. Went on and played for the Saints for more than a couple of seasons, 10 years actually. Played for the New Jersey Generals and the Chicago Blitz. The AAF and the XFL were not around then, so I'm curious to know where those teams are. Wikipedia is not being... Oh, the United States Football League, the USFL. Should have known that, yeah. So he played 10 years in the league and then played a couple of seasons in the USFL, but obviously one of the more successful early quarterbacks in Tennessee football history, him, Pat Ryan, and then, of course, you get on to some of the star-studded names, Heath Shuler, Peyton Manning, T. Martin, who won a national championship, of course, Condors Holloway, T-Rob, and so on and so forth. So Bobby Scott, injured, came in there and played really good. Tennessee goes on to win the Sugar Bowl a couple of weeks later, beating Air Force 34-13 to cap off that season. So, fun story. And it looks like, there was a quote in here that you kind of let off with, saying that this is an unusual group of men. Can you kind of expand on that? That was a post-game comment, obviously, after that game.
Yeah, that was Bill Battle. I thought that was a great quote. It's such an interesting way, I guess, an unusual way to describe your team. But he had mentioned, in his post game stuff that Auburn game really was kind of what taught them how to win games like that. Auburn, I think, was jumped out to a big lead. Tennessee ended up pulling that within a score, and then Auburn ended up winning by a couple of scores. But I think Bill Battle talked about that they learned from that game how to stick in games and stay in there. They did it against South Carolina late in the season, and then obviously against UCLA to to clinch that Sugar Bowl bid. And it may seem like some of the games we've written about are huge bowl games, championship seasons, but Tennessee loses that UCLA game. I don't think they get that Sugar Bowl bid. So, that was definitely one of the more underrated seasons. I think in part because there wasn't a championship at stake for Tennessee that year, but 11-1 is good any year. So, certainly would have been good enough this day and age to be a playoff team. So, I think I did a story a couple of years ago when I was at Rivals about Tennessee teams that would have thrived in a college football playoff format, and there's a bunch. There's a bunch of Tennessee. 85 comes to mind. 89 comes to mind. But that 1970 team was playing really well offensively and had an incredible defense too that forced a lot of takeaways. Tim Priest, Bobby Majors were on that team. Jackie Walker. So kind of list goes on. They just kind of had a lot of perfect pieces together.
You need to revisit that story. Either go find it, since it was Rivals. Maybe I could dip back in the archives and throw it your way. You probably have it saved on a flash drive somewhere, a floppy disk. But that's a really interesting story, like how former Tennessee teams would fare or being like in the college football playoff at 12 teams, which is what it looks like it's staying at for the foreseeable future, or 16 teams. That's pretty interesting. Or even 4 teams back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Before we say goodbye, last minute or so, every day of the show, longtime friend Adam Green wanted me to tell you that you're completely wrong about the black jerseys, dark mode, because that was a Tennessee primary color from back in the day, and he's exactly right. So what's your defense? Black was a primary color for Tennessee way before they started going dark mode here in recent memory.
Yeah, I mean it is, and it's a great look. I said that on the episode. I think it's an incredible look. It looks nice. I get why young guys like it. I just I think a little bit too much. You go back to 1963 when Jim McDonald was the head coach, and Tennessee had the infamous or famous, however you want to look at it, depending on how you feel, the Halloween uniforms. They had the black stripes on the shoulder, the helmet, I think had the orange stripe down the middle, and the black, numerals on the side. So it's been there. It's been a part of it. And of course you can go back even further, before orange was a big part of their color scheme that, maybe, there's black and baseball. I think black belongs for Tennessee baseball. I think, let me say that. I think it looks great on Tennessee baseball. They've won it for a very long time. They played in the black hats. I mean, they won the national championship in those beautiful, the interlocking UT hats here just in 2024. So It looks great. There's nothing wrong with the look. It looks fine. I would just love to see Tennessee just come out every week at home in that traditional look. I'm really hoping, and I might have said this on that episode we did back in December, but really hoping Adidas throws some throwbacks in here, because I think that'd be great. But the problem would be if they wore them, I'd get on here again and complain and say Tennessee never needs to wear anything else. So
yes, you would.
There'd be no room for anything else in the rotation.
And I'm speaking out of turn here because clearly I don't know much about anything, but you got to think way back in the day, right? Like just making, like if you're going to make a uniform or making jerseys of any kind, just black, brown, white.
Yeah.
I mean, just basic, simple. Not just for Tennessee, but for everybody. Like it would be a special order to make it a Tennessee orange, right? Like a lot of that, for any team is just simplistic colors back in the day, just from a manufacturing standpoint, I would imagine. So all right, got to say goodbye. We've talked 12 minutes. That's 5 minutes too long. Noah, great stuff as always. NPC. Well, check it out. It's a free Substack. Go subscribe. The link is in the show notes. And if you want to support what Noah's doing, hey, he will not turn down your money. I won't either, so throw it your way for the Everydayer Club. But come on down, check it all out. Great story, great storytelling. One of the best writers I know, that is Noah Taylor. Noah, as always, man, thanks so much.
Appreciate it, Eric. Thanks for having me on, man.
Great stuff as always there from Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, Noah Taylor, Neyland Press Corps for a little Throwback Thursday. Really, really enjoyed the show here today. We talked Tennessee transfer portal superlatives all the way back in segment number 1. We'd love your feedback on all this and more. Check out the Locked On Vols Everydayer Discord channel where we talk about it in there. But of course, you guys can become a part of the Everydayer Club. Just $5 a month, audio free or ad free audio version of the show. Access to the Locked On merch store, so you can check all that out. All that and more, $5 a month. You can check it all out at lockedonvols.supercast.com. That is lockedonvols.supercast.com. Appreciate you guys as always. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll look ahead to what's coming up this weekend. We'll look ahead to Tennessee and Alabama on the basketball court coming up this weekend, and the latest with Tennessee and the transfer portal, all that and more coming up on a Friday, Locked On Vols. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody.